everyone who are here with us for a moment of silence so we can begin our prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this interview. Help us engage in meaningful discussions. Allow us to grow closer and nurture the bonds of the Filipino martial arts community. This I ask you through your Son, Christ Jesus. Amen. Good morning po. And you are watching an exclusive interview with Romeo Macapagal. But before I begin with the questions, I would like to give him a proper introduction. So he was a commercial fisherman and a construction manager. He was also a security consultant, a shipbuilder and a banker, a historian and a fine writer. And listen to this, he became a World Bank consultant. Hmm. author of the book, author of the book, Calis Ilustrisimo. And I know I should not say this, but I'm really too proud to say it anyway. This man is my older cousin. So guys, maestro par excellence, Romeo Macapagal. Manong Romy, magandang umaga, Manila time. Magandang umaga
Magandang
po sa
umaga
inyo.
po sa
Kumusta
inyong
po?
lahat. Opo. Good morning to everyone. Thank you po.
And of course, I need to just explain to our viewers what they're doing in the Facebook page of Night Wolves Motorcycle Club. We have to do this. We have to do this because this is the only way we can actually come together dahil hindi namin pwede gamitin ang aming profile sa Facebook. And so, thank God we have this page. And welcome everyone to the interview and welcome to our Facebook page, Night Wolves Philippines. Manong Romy, let's begin. Your journey in martial arts. You started as a karateka and a judo player. Come on, let's hear about it.
Yes. But even before I studied judo and karate, in my middle teen years, I was already shown the estilo Kapampangan by my grandfather on my father's side.
Mhm.
Okay. And both journeys, first into the Filipino martial arts and later on into the Japanese arts, were focused on discipline, on a precision of movement. So that later on, when I saw Tatang, I was really impressed by the precision and the efficiency of his movements. This was in early 1985. I was already 40 years old by that time. 1986 rather.
Mm.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
so I was able to discern efficiency when I saw efficiency because of my work experience, and I wanted, I coveted the art first for myself, and later when I realized that it was the last vestige of our old culture in the Philippines, then I became more determined to preserve it. And thus, after 35 years, I finished writing the book of Tatang Ilustrisimo.
Aha. Manong Romy, as I understand, it was first Yuli Romo who met Tatang, and then Yuli Romo introduced Tony Diego to Tatang. Were you already there when this happened?
No, I was actually the last of the seniors to meet Tatang. It was Yuli Romo and then Tony Diego, and then later on, uh, an American gentleman named Michael Belzer came to the Philippines, was introduced to Tatang by Roberto Morales, another senior, and they went on a journey to the south
Uh,
into Jolo, and Mr. Belzer was impressed at the way that Tatang was received by the Joloanos.
mhm.
So that by the time they came back from Jolo, that was the time that I also arrived in Luneta, which was also the time when
Okay.
Topher, Ricketts, and Tony Diego and Edgar Sulite came back from Australia. Within that year, also,
Mhm.
uh, Raymond Floro made a trip to the Philippines, and we had a lot of fun learning and studying Tatang. Those were really what you would call the glory years of friendship and camaraderie. Uh, and it
Okay.
always
Mhm.
makes my heart swell with pride and joy to remember those times.
But did you meet any other masters before meeting Tata?
Oh, yes, there were always the uh, Arnis masters from Luzon and also from the Visayas.
Uh-huh.
The center of Arnis at that time seemed to be the Visayas, especially Cebu. And various masters from there, including the Cañete family, the whole clan, from the oldest uh, uh, and the youngest, which was Manong Johnny. I met Tio
You
Kakoy.
can.
His older brothers, I started to call Tio because they were really that old. Okay, Tio
Mhm.
Yuling, okay, and Tio Momoy, and we had a fun
Mhm.
time being together, including their friends. Okay, Manong Inting Karin, uh-huh, and
I
and
remember this.
yes, and the Balintawak Greats. Okay, so it
Mhm.
really was a very enjoyable time. I
Oh, but
also,
how is Tatang like, ano, Romy? How is Tatang like? I mean, how is he different from all these masters that you mentioned?
well, uh, almost all of those masters, including uh, my dear friend Ernie Presas and his brother
Mm.
Remy,
Teacher.
okay,
Mhm. Remy.
were focused on teaching, on creating a
Mhm.
pedagogy for the transmission of the information in their heads and in their bodies. With Tatang, there was no idea at all, no thought at all of wanting to teach or to transmit. In fact, when Tony came to him, he said, "No, this is only for me." And it took Tony almost a year of courting Tatang before Tatang even consented to show Tony one single technique. And this happened only because Tatang had an old friend who visited him. And he showed it to his old friend, and Tony was present. So
Mhm.
for Tatang, it was something that was very personal because his life depended on not allowing anyone to know his skill, to get a measure of his ability. And I suspect
Mhm.
I have been infected with that attitude. So I have written the book only to have a record of our culture. It is part of our anthropology, part of our history, and that's the main reason.
I heard about Tatang's. He is a very secretive person. So how did he shared with you your very first lessons?
Uh, by the time I met Tatang, he already was convinced to show. And Tatang was a very generous man, but he did not offer. You had to ask him, Tatang, if I made a strike at you like this, what would you do? And he said, tumaga ka, cut or strike. And then he would do magic.
Mhm.
Magic because the efficiency was magical. I have to say
Uh-huh.
this, that Tatang system was not self-developed. Tatang system was a derivative of an old Spanish fencing system.
Uh-huh.
In later research, I found out that it was the Esgrima Común and its later translation into the Spanish saber. Okay. But remember that the Esgrima Común evolved over the 80-year consistent wars of Reconquista, meaning the recovery of Spain from the Moors, who had
Mhm.
occupied Spain for 700 years before the Reconquista. So the efficiencies of techniques were evolved with life and death battles in recovering province after province, castle after castle in Spain for an 80-year period before the Moors finally crossed Gibraltar and went back to Morocco. So
Mhm.
the efficiency, the fighting skill was evolved out of a mutual fight. So it was an exchange of techniques. Which ones were efficient, which ones killed, which ones got the user killed. And it came from
Mhm.
both sides, from the Catholics and from the Islamists. So that it was a distillation of the best fighting methods that could be tested in real life with life and death. So that when
How did
the,
you deal with Tatang's lessons? Because when I was growing up, I heard about the old man's way that he will hurt you first. That's why I, you know, kept my distance. He will not tell you, okay, you hold the stick and you do it like this. No, he will directly hurt you. I heard about that. How did you deal with that, Manong Rocky?
uh, during my time, we were not scared of getting hurt.
Um,
Okay, you play karate, and before you learn how to hold back your punch, you hit your partner.
mhm.
You play judo, and you hit the floor. Typically, there were no mats; it was all concrete.
Yes, I remember.
Yes. So, uh, by generation, had become inured to pain. We understood pain to be part of the learning process. It's martial art. It's
Mhm,
for fighting. So you might
mhm,
as well take the injuries. So for that generation of ours, Yuli, Tony, myself, it was not a big deal to get hurt. Uh, Topher, in transition, he was also used to getting hurt. So it did not matter. It is
mhm,
only the later people who got into computers already, who wanted to preserve their hands. Okay?
uh-huh,
And but Tatang had a system where he said the head and the body can hardly move, but the hands can move.
mhm,
So you have got to hit the hands first to disarm your opponent. And we had the sparring, which involved hitting the hands all the way to the shoulder,
Mhm.
except the head. Huh? You can hit parts of the body, you can hit
Yes.
the shoulder, you can hit the arms. So we didn't mind getting black and blue. We didn't mind losing a fingernail every other week or so from the from the strikes. So we took it for granted. It was no big deal. And we didn't need to manipulate a mouse. We didn't
Mhm.
need to type. I always had the secretary. I only dictated. So it didn't matter to me.
Yeah. Well, for those who just came in here, you are listening to the exclusive interview of Romeo Macapagal, Maestro par excellence. And this interview is powered by Director R.D. Lopez, who is guiding us at the backstage at the moment. Manong Romy, let's talk about a bit about this, your book. I understand JJ Herbas as a big help in doing this. JJ, if you're here, I'm not sure if JJ is watching us. JJ, you are a hero. No, Manong Romy, it took you many years para to compile everything that is inside. Tell us about this one. How did you came up with this very very
Uh,
informative book?
Actually, I started writing when Facebook became available. I would make comments, I would make statements, I would write factual material, and it was a compilation of this material that I had previously written, which was arranged and edited into that book of Tatang.
Mm-hmm.
However, my main help uh, in collating, in putting together the book, editing, especially editing, is Stephen Kokehieng and my daughter.
Uh-huh.
So, Elric Jundis was also very, very helpful. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Roy Harris, who was a student uh, of Tony and myself, uh, contributed his thoughts about his training days here in the Philippines. I
Uh-huh.
also have a very long time friend, Krishna Godhanya, and he was around. He met Tatang. We went around meeting various teachers here, along with my very, very dear friend, Abner Pasa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And during the learning years from Tatang, Raymond Floro would be visiting the Philippines about 3 months out of the year. And during these 3 months, Tony and I took special care to provide Raymond with personalized instruction, with
Mm-hmm.
Tatang always present, so that it was directly from the horse's mouth. We were
Mm-hmm.
just the muscle because the old man couldn't really play the whole day. Okay. At this time, Edgar Sulite was also present and preparing for his trip or movement to the United States, because that was his dream to be able to teach in the US. So really,
Uh-huh.
it took about 3.5 years, almost 4 years, to get
Mm-hmm.
all of the material written down uh, for the archive of Tatang Ilustrisimo system. And eventually, I had to digest it because in the beginning, it was monkey see, monkey do. And it took a long time to digest the essence, the sense of fighting. Eventually, and this might not sit well with some of our friends and the cultures in which they live. I realized that Tatang's art was a killing art. It was intended to bring down the opponent before he could
Hmm.
touch.
I see.
Okay. Uh,
Yeah.
many
Well, you
people,
mentioned Manong. Yes, yes. Go ahead.
many
Go ahead.
people think of Arnis masters as heroes and as paladins. But the fact is, if their services were needed for their community or for their country, then they would use their skills. But in the meantime, they had to put bread because Tatang was fond of eating bread and rice and fish on
Hmm.
the table. And to
Right.
do this, they exercised their skills.
Hmm.
Tatang used his skills. He was a bounty hunter, and in the Philippines, it's easier to bring in the head than the whole struggling
Right.
criminal. Okay. Uh, he also had fights in which he dispatched his opponents.
Hmm. Manong
And
Romy, can you share with us can you share with us the obvious, the very obvious changes that happened in the Filipino martial arts during your time and during this time? The reason why I'm asking this is not to hurt anybody or insult anybody's principles or view on the Filipino martial arts, but a lot of the modern day guys, those who just learned recently, believe that they are more capable, they are more advanced in training, in dieting, exercise, etc., etc., and they think that the eskrima in the past is just that basic eskrima of the past. What are the obvious changes that you can tell us from your time to this time?
well, let me speak of it in a historical point of view.
Yes, please.
After the war, the first books on Eskrima were written by educated people, those who had gone to college and who obviously were from well-to-do families where they did not have to do a stitch of work. They had idealized visions of what Eskrima should be. So one of the most obvious was they took away the thrust because they said it is Western, okay? And hitting, bludgeoning, or cutting movements were indigenous because none of them had really studied or had really known about our history. Right now, only the internet
Uh-huh.
is providing us with information about Philippine history, the nitty gritty of it. A lot of it was glorified, written uh, for my generation so that we would become good citizens. Anyway, so the first arnis that came out was based on the later development of the saber, both from the Spaniards and from the Americans. And if you see pictures of that period, even the Filipinos are wearing sabers. Okay. And saber work is basically uh, contact work. You stop a cut directed at you
Yes.
by using your blade on the blade, okay, of your opponent. So a lot of it is percussion. And what is unknown is many of the movements of the old style uh, Philippine arnis or eskrima was based on avoiding the cut and inserting your cut, was based on
Mhm.
avoiding the thrust and thrusting instead. And this is evidenced by the kind of weapons that were carried by Filipinos who were recruited into the constabulary of the
Mhm.
Americans. These are thrusting weapons. They are not cutting weapons. And these are weapons that cannot take percussion strikes. They would bend or
Mhm.
they would break. Uh, so, uh, but you know, the natural movement against a strike is to push out your hands. And if you have a weapon, then you make the weapon block the attack because that is
Mhm.
instinctive. And so came out and evolved the instinctive blocking movements. Parrying came
Mhm.
later when it was considered more efficient or examples had been seen. All of the old
Mhm.
arnis practically disappeared. In Pampanga, it disappeared because of the Hukbalhap movement. People did not
Uh,
want to be identified because they would be recruited to train the Hukbalhap and then the military would go after them. So everybody denied. I don't know any armies. In the Ilocos, where everyone
mhm.
in my youth, every male, adult male, carried a daga, beautiful dagas. But
Mhm.
eventually, the carbine became available. And if you had a feud, then you simply went and sprayed the house of your enemy with bullets. So the sword came out of use.
I
Okay.
see. Okay, so from the sword, we go to the stick. Okay, so we understand the gruesomeness of using the blade in fighting. Fuego todo, purely
Yes.
stick, or
Yes.
was it stick or blade anyway? But fuego todo. I believe fuego todo was banned in 1954 after the death of one man in Tarlac in a cup,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I'm sure our audience would like to hear about the history of fuego todo. Manong Roque.
Juego todo was a way for people to settle disputes. Later on, it was an adjunct or a replacement for cockfighting. People bet on the protagonists the way that they would bet on their own chosen roosters in a cockfight. Okay, the same betting system is there. Okay, the prize money is also there, but there were
Uh-huh.
very specific rules. If
Mm,
you got blooded, you lost. If you lost
mm,
your stick, you lost. Or if you gave up because of the ferocity of the attack, then you lost. It was very
mm,
simple and it was designed so that serious injuries would not happen. However, this single incident of one escrimador losing his life after being struck on the forehead caused the banning of Huego Todo all
mhm,
over the Philippines. Okay? And people do not consider that during that time, boxers, there were about 8 to 10 deaths from boxing, from poor refereeing that would happen, but they didn't stop boxing simply because a weapon was used. The weapons
mhm.
for Huego Todo ranged from garrotes, which are hardwood branches, to rattan sticks.
Uh-huh.
And the rattan sticks that were used were also quite potent weapons.
I'm sure the audience wanted to see a sample of your Fuego Todo sticks. I know you have there.
Well, this is a garrote.
Okay. Now
It's a
imagine
walking
getting hit
stick.
with that.
Okay, it's made of mulave.
Uh,
Mulave is about the same quality as American hardwood.
yes.
It doesn't break.
Hmm.
Okay, and this will crush your skull.
Definitely.
And for walking and fighting, there is
Hmm.
a copper ferrule at the end, which I covered with rubber. Okay, so the end has a copper ferrule also, and it is designed so that it does not slip out of your hand. For
Right.
walking, you slip your hand in it. But for
Mm-hmm.
fighting, unless you were incompetent, you would keep your hand out.
Uh-huh.
People who are incompetent will want to keep their uh, string so that
Just to
if
retain the
they lose
weapon. Huh?
the grip, then they can recover it. But then if
Uh-huh.
you lose your stick, if you lose it in your hand, you're dead anyway. Uh,
I see. So do you think
Juego
Manong
todo,
Romy, Huwego Todo? Uh-huh. Yes.
Juego todo lasted until about 20 years ago in some of the more remote parts of the
Okay.
Philippines. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And these were private affairs.
Yes.
Uh, the last ones would have happened somewhere in Laguna, in the mountain
Mm-hmm.
areas of Laguna. Okay. And the sword fights, there's a curious character of the Filipino. I had a friend who was a doctor at Tacloban General Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And when she saw that I was into Arnis, because she would visit with our family, and she said, "You know, Romy, during the height of my practice, which was about 20 years ago, some people would still be brought in with sword wounds." And she went on to recount that it was practice during those days. For people to get together on a Sunday afternoon, they would have a bottle of rum and a bottle of Coke each. And they would start to drink. And the drinking would lead to storytelling. And storytelling would lead to braggadocio. And then someone would, "No, I don't think you can really do that." And I says, "Okay, yeah, let's check each other out." And these people always carry Sansibars. They even go to church wearing Sansibars. The last time I was there, it was about 25 years ago. Okay. And they had rules. No hitting to the vital spots, just the arm, the
Mm-hmm.
hands. But sometimes they make mistakes. And they
Yeah.
always have a jeep ready so that
Mm-hmm.
when someone gets cut, they take the jeep, they go to the hospital, they go to the ER, they sew him up, and after he's
Mm-hmm.
sewn up, they go back and drink. So,
What kind of so do you think Manong Romy, Huwego Todo is still an applicable way to settle disputes in these modern times?
perhaps in the areas of the country which
Uh-huh.
have not become over civilized and influenced by Western value systems, they
Mm-hmm.
might still. In fact, I think in the last 5 years, there has been a Juego Todo that turned into a vendetta.
We cannot actually call a Rambulan a Huwego Todo because that's not man
No,
to
no,
man.
no, no, but
Definitely
that
not.
is
Yes.
something.
Uh-uh.
Rambulan is always present, even today.
Yes, it is.
You will see groups of teenagers running back and forth, trying to outdo each other, trying to waylay each other with two by fours, two by twos.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there are many recorded incidents in police records about this. And even today, uh, the records of hospital admissions in Negros show a preponderance during for violence of cuts to the knees and to the legs,
Mhm.
and which are evidence of fighting. I once accompanied a group which wanted to do uh, what do you call this investigations into our martial systems. And while we were riding in a van going to a remote barrio, mm, the person, the head of the group, asked me, "Mang Romy, That is the second person I have seen without hand. What happens here? And then a third person appeared on the horizon, and he also did not have a right hand. And I said, because when they fight, they strike at the hand,
Mhm.
and there is no problem with the police because the one who got cut off will not go and file a claim. He lost. Okay. And if he's man enough or his relatives are men enough, then they will go after the guy who cut off his hand.
Mhm.
But typically, these are arranged duels.
Yes. Yes. So for those of you who just came in here, you are watching an exclusive interview with Romeo Macapagal, maestro par excellence, and this interview is being powered by Director R.D. Lopez, who is at the moment at the backstage giving us utmost support. Thank you very much, Direct R.D. So, Manong Romy, uh, in the modern day na punta na tayo. Let's go to the modern day. Our policemen, would you advise our policemen to carry the rattan stick instead of the collapsible baton? Can you
In
comment
fact,
on this?
in fact,
Mm-hmm.
the collapsible baton is so expensive, the police will not issue it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some who, during the heyday of the collapsible baton, got themselves their personal collapsible batons. But
Yes.
the issue weapon is a rattan stick, not for hurting people, but for guiding people. You need to stay this far from each other. Please
Mm-hmm.
get into line. There are very few instances where the police will have to use these rattan sticks that they carry. There used to be a Billy that was an aftermath of the American influence. The batuta or the Billy got out of fashion about 30 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And instead, because of riots, because of crowd control, the rattan came into being. Now, I have to mention that there is a group of policemen who have taken up harness training. I think I met them at a reunion of the Lightning Scientific, which was headed by Tatay Ben Lema.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, they are powerful escrimadores.
Impressive.
Yes, very
Mm-hmm.
impressive. And they conduct themselves like gentlemen. I give
Mm-hmm.
them my respect.
I see. So before we entertain the questions coming from our audience, Manong Romy, last night we had a very interesting topic on anting-anting. Now, I would like to read uh, a part of your book. Siyempre, I do not want to give away what is inside this book, but there is something here about oración versus bullet. This is very interesting because it caught my attention. Please allow me to read this. Ito lang, Manong Romy, pangiliti
Sige.
lang, just to give them a taste of what they're gonna expect from the book Calis Ilustrisimo. So the title is Oración versus
Yes.
Bullet. There was also a ritual every Holy Week, which I think Holy Week is coming.
Yes.
There was also a ritual every Holy Week where people with anting-anting talisman would try out their anting-anting. Anting-anting are amulets that convey invulnerability to gunshot or blade hacks.
Yes.
Tatang would write on a piece of paper. This piece of paper would now be pasted or stapled onto the target board, and shooters would take turns trying to shoot the coupon band size orasyon. Very few were able to even touch the edge of the paper on which the oracion or the incantation was written. When I tried, this is you, when Manong Romy tried, okay, felt that somehow at the moment, this is you talking, that I pulled the trigger, squeezed the trigger, just at the moment when the pin would drop on the primer, something, some force would nudge the barrel up, left, right, down, up. Now, at this time, I was very competent shooter. I was a national champion, collegiate shooting, and I had been shooting since I was maybe 11. So, because I was analyzing what was happening, I was intrigued by that force which seemed to override my aim at the right moment so that my bullet would not hit the center of the target. I discussed this with Justice Elvinias. I know the Justice Elvinias, and he said that indeed there are entities called upon by the Oracion to help and protect, to ensure against harm the wearer of the amulet. In this case, the folded coupon bond placed in a plastic wrapper and hang around the neck of the person who wanted to be protected. Manong Romy, in the modern days, we still see people wearing anting-anting. And this is a very interesting story coming from you, directly coming from you.
Yes.
Do you think that anting-antings will still work now
if
in this modern day?
you if you go through the procedures which empower the anting-anting,
Mm-hmm.
yes, they work. In fact, I am friends with the Haring Bakal. And while I was the chairman of the Inner Mind Society of the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
which was a branch of Mr. Licauco's
Jaime Licauco. Mm-hmm.
organization, yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jaime and I and two other friends went and visited the Haring Bakal because we were looking into the mechanisms of action which
Mm-hmm.
provide what you would now call invulnerability and something like a violation of the laws of Newtonian physics. And over a 3 or 4 year period that we visited them, uh, we were able to perceive, for instance, the photographs of the blade that was being used would be translucent, almost glass-like. And also that it took a long time to prepare the initiate so that his mind frequencies, his brain frequencies would go low, 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 low. And it's this lowered brain frequency that causes the metaphysical transformation of the force so that the skin is invulnerable to the cut. But
Mm-hmm.
you get terrible hematomas. They cut you so strongly, first at the inside of the thigh. Somebody holds your elbows back, and another guy opens your knees while you're seated on the bench. And the initiator strikes you very hard. Boom, boom, boom. And it sounds like a pipe
Yes.
hitting the tire of a big truck. Then you are stood up and you are hit in the belly. And
Mm-hmm.
while your shirt might get cut, your skin does not. But
Uh-huh.
your belly will develop huge hematomas, which do not go away for at least a month and a half.
And your
So the
bones.
force, yes,
Mm-hmm.
but the skin does not get cut.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. And this is the
I see.
reason mm, why people still go there. Majority of the members of Haring Bakal are from the police and the military.
Military.
People
Yes.
whose lives are laid on the line every day.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
there is a part of your book also on page 94, and this is from Tatang mismo. These are Tatang's words. He
Yes,
said, "Don't look at the eyes of your enemy.
yes,
Look beyond him." Okay. Uh, and this is what he meant. The eyes of the enemy are intended to be deceitful. Look past the enemy to see with your peripheral vision his movements, which betray his intention. However, if you have to focus your vision, this should be at the weapon hand. Focus vision is processed in a linear manner by the brain, as in pick up, registry, decision, muscular action. Peripheral vision causes automatic reaction from instinct and learned habitual movements. My question here, Manong Romy, is when Tatang says, do not look at the eyes of your enemy, look beyond him, does he also mean that that person you are fighting with might have anting-anting and could actually control you?
yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
Okay,
Because if you
okay,
look at the eyes, you can be
mhm,
hypnotized.
right.
And
Right.
looking beyond actually puts you into a subconscious mode so that your actions are, as I said in the book, are habitual. So therefore, your exercises, your practice must make your responses immediate.
Uh,
And Tatang would actually spar looking away from you,
yes,
looking at you only with his
I've
the
seen
side
him
of
do
his
that.
eyes. Uh, and
I've seen him do that. Yes,
yes, obviously,
when actually explaining to you he's fighting the person. Yeah, I've seen that.
uh, yes. Uh,
So to our
so he
audience,
was
you are now free to send in your questions to Manong Romy. Yes, Manong Romy, please continue.
anyway. What I was going to say was
Mhm.
Tatang never looked directly into his opponent. He would
Uh,
always look sideways, downwards, upwards. He would always avoid eye contact
uh,
because he did not want to be mesmerized and he did not want to be tricked by the eye movements of his opponent. I know in
mm,
some martial arts, you are supposed to look directly into the eyes. But with
right.
Tata, with a lifetime of
Yeah,
experience, okay, he
he would
died at
never.
around age 97. He killed his first man at age 17. Okay, that's something like 80 plus years of a life that was always violent or potentially violent. Okay.
We have a question here from Elric Jundis. Can Mang Romy share more about the need for courting that modern Filipinos and foreigners would not understand?
Uh, yes, some some maestros today are still so jealous
Mhm.
of their art that they will not share it with just about anybody. They want to know or get to really know the character of the applicant. Uh, and even if they want to be able to uh, share their knowledge, they're always very conscious of the character of what use that person might put his knowledge into. And somehow we still make mistakes. Like I have made mistakes with some people, but I follow the dictum of the Ilocano and the Kapampangan.
Mhm.
You teach only your friends or your son's friends, and you teach only your blood.
Mhm.
Okay. So with me now, my remaining students are somehow related by blood.
Uh-huh.
one way or another, and it
Yes.
seems to work.
Okay.
So,
Any more questions? Yes, Manong Romy, just continue while we're waiting for the questions to pop up.
so
Yes,
this
po.
can be quite disappointing to a person who comes from a different culture, where if I pay you money, you teach me, and I own what I learned from you.
Mhm.
Okay. With us, the very few of us left, no, you don't pay me money. I'll feed
Mhm.
you when you come to my house. Okay? I'll drive you to your hotel. But I want you to remain true to what I taught.
Ah,
And you don't really own what I taught you. But some still try to break that. Okay? So what? They didn't learn it correctly anyway.
yes.
Mhm. Because I have also
Okay.
learned,
Mhm. Yes.
I have also learned to hold back until I am sure of the
Understood.
character of
Yeah.
the person. I hold back. Okay, please.
Which I think is the right attitude. Actually, it's correct. It's not all about money, right?
Yep.
A question from Bill Anderson. Hey, Bill. Thank you for coming in. Bill Anderson is asking how much has the FMA changed from 1970s compared to today? A lot of changes, though. How much has the
Not,
FMA changed from the 1970s?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Sige, there has been a lot of change because it has been turned into a sport in order to
Mm-hmm.
propagate it, and the transmission of the culture has been imperfect, so that the Filipino culture, on which the way of training and the way that arnis is used, has been appropriated by other cultures and submerged into their own cultures. So it is now a matter of force versus skill, of speed and power versus uh, real tested skills or techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And our training methods have also been submerged into the more active, more forceful, modern approaches to sports development. I'm not
Okay.
saying that the
Mhm.
modern approaches to gaining power and speed are wrong, but they seem to be misapplied when it comes to arnis.
Mhm.
The best example of what arnis is and what it should be is kendo, even if kendo has been evolved to become a cultural transmission of the Japanese ways, or
Yes.
even Olympic fencing, because the original movements of epee, foil, and saber have been retained even when they were already out, when dueling was already outlawed. But many people who have seen the techniques of Ilustrisimo recognize the saber
Mhm.
and the foil movements and the thrusting movements of the epee, because harness, as we know it, transmitted to us by the Spaniards through the Padres Capitanes,
Mhm.
okay, in trying to protect the settlements, are the same in origin to those of the Europeans, except that they acquired a different flavor here,
Uh-huh.
because of cultural and geographical changes.
Right. Okay. Manong Romy, the military men, in general, okay, military men do need to train in Eskrima. We know that because they need this in the battlefield. But
Yes.
what benefit will it give the policemen and the barangay captains, what benefit will it give them in learning the use of bolo? Because I
Ah,
heard of some people teaching the barangay captains the use of bolo,
mm,
and barangays are not considered as policemen. And policemen also are learning the use of bolo. Their job is to arrest. Barangay men, their job is to um, make things, just to
settle
make
down.
sure everything is peaceful. Right, right.
Yes.
So what benefit does the blade training?
Uh, I am
Yeah,
surprised to hear of barangay tanods being trained for the use of the bolo. But the best use of arnis or eskrima techniques is with the use of the rattan stick.
yes. Mhm.
Our barangay tanod used to be armed with arnis sticks of this diameter.
That's big.
They
Uh-huh.
provide enough power to knock down or to even break arms if necessary. Now,
Mhm.
people practice with this
Smaller.
thin,
Mhm.
okay, but this is only for muestra. However, there is a part of arnis, and this comes from the juego todo, okay, where rattan sticks or garrotes are used, okay, to lessen the lethality. And this is the kind of arnis that should be taught to our barangay tanods because they are meant to use dumog. They are meant to use our old hand-me-down silat movements, which you can see Tatang doing. Okay. And they are effective. Instead of using judo throws or jiu-jitsu movements, you can use this with more facility. Okay. And the objective of, let me segue a bit. There are two kinds of silat. One is
Yes.
village silat, which you use against your fellow villager because you will need to live with him and his family for the rest of your life and that of your family. Your tendency is not to hurt. Your tendency is simply to calm him down. This should be the barangay tanod attitude. And
Mhm.
then there is also tribal silat, where you actually go in contention against another tribe. And here you can kill.
Uh-huh.
You can be violent and you can kill. But the village
Mhm.
silat tries to be as gentle as possible.
Uh-huh.
This is something that is lost because our culture has become so westernized, has become so engaged with Western attitudes that we fail to remember that we live in very tight, closed communities, in very congested spaces, and that requires a different form of peacekeeping. Our tendency is to follow some examples where there's a criminal, okay, bam, 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 fill him with hope. No,
Yes.
it happened recently, and
Oh, yes. I've seen the
fortunately,
video.
yeah, okay. So, but really, our peacekeeping inside the barangay should be
Mhm.
gentle. And in fact, the barangay tanods still do this. They still use diplomacy. They still use nice words and statements.
Mhm.
Okay. So, teaching the bolo to barangay tanods, for me, it's criminal.
Indeed.
Yes.
I agree. 100%. I agree to that. Uh, anyway, thank you very much, Rolly Balao, Lawrence Eugenio, Jesse Polillo. Thank you so much for coming in. Bill Anderson, of course. JJ Hervas is here. JJ, when are you coming home? I have to be there to see you. Manong Rene Thompson is here also. Manong Rene, thank you for coming in. Atalia Lauren, So another question from Bill Anderson. One more question our audience, and then we'll try to wrap up the show. From Bill, do you think that traditional values of the Filipino culture has been de-emphasized in the FMA as it is taught today?
I think yes,
Mm-hmm.
because the main market of the FMA is the West. And to be able to sell to the West, like the Japanese did, they find out what the customer needs and they provide what the customer wants. So the cultural values are left out for pleasing the customer. But I have to mention because I heard the name of Toto Rene Tongson.
Mm-hmm.
Toto Rene teaches Abanico Tres Puntas. It is a system very similar to that of Calis Ilustrisimo. And Rene Tongson, my dear friend, he considers himself as a caretaker of the art and wants to be able to share it with the world when he goes around teaching. Okay. He has taken a different approach. He's more active. He goes around and teaches me as long as I have it in my mind, as long as I have taught it to a very few trusted people, I'll keep it to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I find someone who deserves to be taught, then he has to prove it over time.
Okay. Manong Romy, I just need your comments on these four short sentences. Make your comments short na rin. We will change roles, okay? I am the master and you are the student. I want you to comment on these words. If you cannot move the way I move, your technique will not be effective. Until you move the way I move, then the application of the technique is not effective. So make a comment on that. I'm your teacher, you're my student, I'm telling you this. If you cannot move the way I move, sorry, you cannot. It's not correct. Make a
From my point
short
of
comment
view,
on that.
from my point of view,
Uh,
if your movements are self-evolved and have not been proven in battle, I will not even go to you.
mhm,
Okay? And I cannot move exactly like you because my physique, my construction is different from you. But the
mhm,
principles of efficient movement are always the same.
uh-huh,
Efficiency is getting a certain value for the least effort.
mhm,
Okay? And this efficiency provides for my survival in a fight. I
uh-huh,
will come out alive, you don't come out of it. Okay?
mhm,
And
okay.
the principles are scientific, they are very technical, and unless I see that in you, I will not ask you for instruction.
Uh-huh,
Mm.
I see. So, okay, next. Again, comment on this. The old and basic technique of the past are still the same old effective techniques today. The old
No
and basic
longer.
techniques of the past are still the same old effective techniques today.
If there has been an effort to preserve the effective techniques and you use them in the same way today, yes,
Mhm,
it is a matter of perfectly replicating the principles, the technology involved. Because unless it is based on good geometry, unless it is based on good physics, then it will become a made up technique, unproven in life and death situations. Why should I
mhm,
put myself into that role where I'm using something that will not work?
mhm. Nice. Okay. Number three, I'm your teacher, you're my student. if you cross-train with other systems, you will not be an effective warrior.
Yes and no.
Okay.
If what you have is a made up system, I should really should cross train with other made up systems. And maybe by some kind of luck, I will find something that works for me. But if you have an old system, proven
Mm,
in battle, proven by your survival in fights, okay, even if you are in jail, I will go to jail to learn from you,
just to learn.
just
Oh,
to learn
that's
from you.
very nice. Very
Uh,
nice answer on that. Okay, one more. One more. I'm not trying to be controversial here, but these are most of the time I hear from so-called masters. Okay, so one last. You only need one FMA master. Me.
Again, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Are you alive but in jail, or are you alive and out escaping the law because you have killed so many people in fights? Or like
The answer is a very tricky question. Anyway, okay, Manong Romy, please tell our audience where can they purchase this book, Galing Ilustrisimo.
basically,
Oh, very
this
nice
book
book.
is
Yeah.
now being distributed by Bunal Brand in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have stopped shipping outside of the Philippines because of varying transportation shipping costs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can get a difference of 1,000 pesos between the time that I ask for a quote from the shipping
Mm-hmm.
company to the time that their messenger comes to pick up the book and get my payment. So I do not ship out anymore. I have a final shipment today, and I think I've lost maybe 1,000 pesos on two
Mm.
shipments because they suddenly changed the price. So I will not do it anymore.
So how can they
Bunal
get a
Brand in
copy?
the USA has enough books
Mm-hmm.
and will ship
Uh-huh.
anywhere within the continental United States, within rather within the continental Americas, and also into Europe, and
I
also once in a while to Asia. Bunal Brand is owned and operated by Steve Del Castillo.
Uh-huh. You have no more
Um,
distributors in the States, in Europe.
no other. Here we have the Para Shop Manila,
Mm-hmm.
and they can message. They can be messaged on Facebook for a copy, but they may have not too many copies left.
Ah,
I
I see.
might I might have a reprint, but I
Mm-hmm.
will have the reprint done at the same time that I send the second copy, the second version. Oh, I'm getting excited that I'm going to print the sequel to the
Mm-hmm.
first book, Tatang Ilustrisimo. It is called Basag,
Mm-hmm.
and it is based on Tatang's statement, like an
Mm-hmm.
orason. The techniques have their own basag or components.
Ah,
And it also delves into the other half of Filipino martial art, which is the use of orasyon, of anting-anting, both
mm-hmm.
for protection and also for training the mind so that the mind can train the body into
Uh-huh.
efficiency.
So, guys, only limited copies left, right?
Yes.
Limited copies are left. So get them now. This is a very fine book. I have read this twice, and every now and then, when I have nothing to do, I just go back to the different stories that is written here. Even look at this, Tatang's death is here. Tumbada, there you go, Basag, according to Tatang. And You have to get the last remaining pieces. Calis Ilustrisimo, the archive system of Antonio Tatang Ilustrisimo by Romeo Macapagal. Manong Romy, I would like to thank you so much. 2 years in the making for this interview. I actually have a ton more questions for you, but we don't have much time. We are just using the studio of Director R.D. Lopez. Direct R.D., thank you very much for lending us your studio. Thank you for for giving us uh, the opportunity to use your platform in making this interview
I would also
possible.
like to thank RD Lopez. Uh, Maraming salamat po.
Maraming
It's
maraming
a
sa. Oh, here we go. Let's meet the director. There he is, Director
it's
R.D.
an it's
Lopez.
it's an honor
Chief.
to hear about your story, sir, and it's a privilege to host this interview with you. And yes, this interview is being recorded, so it could be posted later on a specific venue that Brother Mumbakki would post later on. So again, thank you so much. My pleasure, sir.
Maraming
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 salamat
salamat po.
for the
Wala
audience
pong
that
anuman po.
listen. Thank you, R.D. Manong Romy, sige po, magandang umaga sa inyo.
Magandang
Okay.
magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Thank you.
Thank you po. Thank you. Bye.